In a quiet, overcrowded corner of Cebu City, where the air smelled of salt from the nearby sea and the sound of traffic never truly slept, lived Miguel Santos, a 19-year-old Filipino boy whose dreams were far bigger than the narrow alley he called home. Their house was made of thin plywood sheets and rusted tin, patched together after every typhoon. When rain fell, water slipped through the roof and formed small puddles on the concrete floor, forcing Miguel and his parents to move their few belongings from corner to corner. Poverty was not a phase in Miguel's life, it was a permanent companion. Every morning before sunrise, Miguel woke to the sound of his mother kneading dough. She sold pandesal from a small wooden cart near the jeepney stop. Miguel helped her, shouting softly to passing workers while trying not to feel ashamed. His father, a tired tricycle driver, left early and returned late with barely enough money to cover food and electricity. Some nights, dinner was only rice and soy sauce. Other nights, there was nothing at all. Yet even in hunger, Miguel carried something powerful inside him, his voice. Music entered Miguel's life not through lessons or instruments, but through survival. When he was younger, he sang to distract himself from an empty stomach. He sang to drown out his parents' whispered arguments about money. He sang during brownouts, when the entire alley fell into darkness and fear crept in. His voice echoed softly against the walls, raw and untrained, but filled with emotion. Neighbors would pause and listen from their windows. Some smiled. Some wiped away tears. Others shook their heads, believing talent meant nothing without opportunity. At night, under a single flickering bulb, Miguel practiced relentlessly. He had no microphone, no piano, only a cracked mirror and a borrowed phone playing old ballads and gospel songs. He sang until his throat hurt, until his legs trembled from standing too long. In his reflection, he imagined a stage bigger than his fears, brighter than his struggles. But reality always returned. School fees were unpaid. Shoes were worn out. Dreams felt expensive. One evening, while scrolling through videos at an internet cafe, Miguel watched America's Got Talent. He saw singers from around the world, ordinary people standing before judges like Simon Cowell, turning pain into power. Something shifted inside him. For the first time, he believed his story mattered. When he told his parents about auditioning, silence filled the room. His mother held his hand, torn between fear and faith. His father looked away, unsure how to protect his son from disappointment. The days that followed were filled with doubt. People in the neighborhood whispered. Some laughed. Others warned him not to dream too big. But Miguel held on to the only thing he owned completely, his voice. On the day he left Cebu City, his mother placed a worn rosary in his hand and whispered a prayer. As Miguel boarded the plane, his heart raced. He wasn't just chasing fame. He was carrying the weight of sacrifice, struggle, and hope. And deep inside, he knew this journey would change everything. The moment Miguel Santos stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, the bright lights felt heavier than the years of struggle he carried on his shoulders. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted the microphone, and his eyes scanned the massive theater in Los Angeles, a place so far removed from the narrow streets of Cebu City that it felt unreal. The audience buzzed with curiosity, but Miguel could barely hear them over the pounding of his own heart. This was the stage he had dreamed of in darkness, yet now that he stood on it, fear threatened to steal his breath. When he introduced himself, his voice was soft and nervous. He spoke about coming from the Philippines, about helping his family survive, about singing being the only thing that made him feel alive. At the judges' table, Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He had heard thousands of stories like this before, and his face showed quiet skepticism. To Simon, talent mattered more than backstories. Miguel felt that doubt instantly. For a brief second, he considered walking off the stage. Then the music began. Miguel closed his eyes, remembering his mother's tired smile, his father's aching hands, the nights he sang to forget hunger. When he opened his mouth, the first note came out trembling, but honest. As the melody continued, his voice grew stronger, deeper, filled with pain and hope intertwined. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Each lyric sounded like a confession, every high note carrying years of unspoken emotion. The audience slowly fell silent. Simon's posture changed. He leaned forward, eyebrows lifting slightly. By the second verse, the doubt on his face was replaced with surprise. This was not just another singer. This was a story unfolding through sound. Miguel's voice cracked at one point, but instead of ruining the performance, it made it more powerful. You could hear the struggle in that crack, the kind no vocal training could teach. Halfway through the song, a woman in the audience wiped away tears. Others followed. The theater felt connected, as if everyone was breathing together. Simon glanced at the other judges, then back at Miguel, clearly affected. When the final note rang out, Miguel held it with everything he had left, then let it go, lowering his head as if expecting rejection. For a moment, there was silence. Then the room exploded. The audience stood, cheering wildly. Miguel looked up in shock, tears filling his eyes. Simon remained quiet, studying him. Finally, Simon spoke, his voice calm but sincere. He explained that true talent isn't about technique alone, it's about truth. He told Miguel that his voice carried life, pain, and courage, and that kind of authenticity was rare. Simon admitted he hadn't expected much, but what he heard had completely changed his mind. In that moment, Miguel realized he was no longer invisible. His voice had crossed oceans, broken doubts, and turned struggle into strength. Miguel Santos could barely believe what was happening. The applause, the cheers, the standing ovation, it all felt surreal. Tears streamed down his face as he looked at the judges' table, where Simon Cowell and the others were clapping, smiles spreading across their faces. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but reality was far more overwhelming. He was no longer the shy boy singing in alleys of Cebu City, no longer just the son of a tricycle driver and a pandesal vendor. On this stage, Miguel's voice had transformed his life. It had told a story that needed no words, a story of poverty, perseverance, and unwavering hope. Simon Cowell finally leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his expression a mixture of amazement and respect. "Miguel," he said, his British accent cutting through the noise, "you have done something extraordinary. What you just did, it wasn't perfect, technically speaking, but it was honest, powerful, and filled with heart. That is what makes a performer unforgettable. That is what makes people feel, truly feel." Miguel could barely hear the rest through the roar of the audience, but Simon's words sank deep into his soul. This was validation he had never known, the confirmation that his struggle, his sacrifices, and his dreams mattered. Meanwhile, back in Cebu City, Miguel's mother sat in their small home, watching the live broadcast on a tiny television. Her hands trembled as she clutched a worn rosary, tears flowing freely down her face. "My son," she whispered, her voice breaking, "he did it." His father, who had never cried openly, leaned over and rested a heavy hand on her shoulder, overwhelmed with pride. The entire neighborhood soon gathered outside, listening to the broadcast on their radios and phones, sharing the joy of someone they had watched grow up singing in the streets. Back on stage, Miguel's fellow contestants whispered their congratulations, but it was Simon who changed everything. With a decisive gesture, Simon pressed the golden buzzer, sending a shower of sparks down around Miguel. "You've earned this," Simon said with finality, smiling genuinely. "You have touched all of us, and this is just the beginning." Miguel collapsed to his knees, tears mixing with laughter as the confetti fell, realizing that the life he had always dreamed of was finally within reach. His voice, once only heard in the alleys of Cebu City, was now resonating across the world. This was more than an audition. It was a triumph of the human spirit. Miguel had turned years of hardship into something beautiful, something inspiring. He had taken the pain of his past and woven it into a story that could move strangers, cross continents, and ignite hope. Every note he had sung carried the weight of his family's sacrifices, every crack in his voice bore the hardships he had endured, and every tear reflected the resilience that had brought him this far. From the narrow streets of Cebu City to the dazzling lights of America's Got Talent, Miguel's journey reminded everyone that true talent is not just measured in skill, but in courage, heart, and the ability to transform suffering into joy. As Simon Cowell hugged him and praised his voice again, Miguel realized something profound: this was just the beginning. His story, his voice, and his journey would continue to inspire millions, proving that no matter where you come from, dreams could indeed come true, and a simple song could truly spread a smile across the world. Glowing Star.